All right, that's the risers. Let's go have some fun and start looking at the fallers from NHL free agency, starting off with one of the more head-scratching contracts, I think, JT Compher.
Yeah, JT Compher, we knew he was going to get significant money and significant term because it was such a weak market and he's a really strong two-way center. So I'm not surprised that he got the deal he did from the Detroit Red Wings. But if we look at the fantasy value there, the line mate quality for him, you can't match what he had in Colorado. He played almost all this past season with Mikko Rantanen. Of course, JT Compher had his best offensive numbers. If you're not playing with Mikko Rantanen, it's pretty much almost guaranteed to be a downgrade, whoever you're playing with. So just that alone doesn't matter what the possible permutations of wingers are. You know, David Perron, Lucas Raymond, doesn't matter. It's not Mikko Rantanen. So value goes down based on the company he's keeping in Detroit.
Yeah, all right, I agree with that one. Anthony Duclair involved in a trade.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a trap. So I think some people out there might think, hey, Anthony Duclair gets traded to the Sharks. He's going to have a bigger role there, which could actually increase his fantasy value. He's further removed from that Achilles injury that limited him to start or for much of last season. But again, it's line mate quality. The Sharks are a terrible team, and the options to play with, maybe you get Thomas Hertl as your center, Logan Couture, but Duclair's line mates were Alexander Barkov and Carter Verhaeghe. So you're not playing with players of that caliber, no matter what the scenario is going to be in San Jose. So similar to JD Compher, it's just a downgrade no matter what. Anthony Duclair will have weaker line mates, period.
Yeah, that one, don't love that one, but they need for Florida. It makes sense. For San Jose, it also makes sense. But from a fantasy value, I'm unfortunately having to knock Duclair off my list every year, going forward, I should say. Max Pacioretty. Now, this one I think was a bit of an interesting one.
Yeah, that was one of the weirder signings for me, just in the sense I didn't see Pacioretty picking the Capitals as his team. They're sort of a team in decline, and obviously they have an elite top line left winger already in Alex Ovechkin, so it just limits the possibility of what you can do with Pacioretty. Yes, Ovi plays the point on the power play, so you could see Pacioretty getting some PP1 time. So I think he's still going to have value, but I don't like the idea that he's blocked by Ovechkin. It limits his ceiling because we know that Pacioretty is going to be at best a second line player. So does that mean you're playing with Nicholas Backstrom, who's aging, Evgeny Kuznetsov, who has been inconsistent? Maybe it's Dylan Strome, who again is not like a super high ceiling center. So overall, I just think there were better situations that Pacioretty could have landed in. So I see it being a slight downgrade. I still think a healthy Pacioretty gets 25 goals, but I don't think we're looking at 35 goals based on the situation and the declining team.
Yeah, it's like 2 years ago, this would have been a great move. But after going from Vegas, where the team was competitive, they missed the playoffs, but then win the Stanley Cup after trading him. Goes to Carolina, everyone's kind of expecting big things. Going to Washington, that feels like a step down. Might be able to play still a pretty solid role. We expect that, but he also has to stay healthy. I think at this point, it's just a buyer beware, no matter where he goes, just because of his injury history. So, um, there's that. I guess we'll go to his former Carolina Hurricanes teammate of about 5 seconds, Pyotr Kochetkov, one of your favorite players, and might be like top 5 player we mentioned on this show so far in the history of the Poolies.
Yeah, if anyone's watching, you can see I'm making a pouty face right now. But if you're listening, I'll
Yeah,
tell you, I'm making a pouty face because come on, Carolina, what are you doing? You're paying him $2 million a year for 4 more years, and you just keep blocking the young man who's a good goaltender. He was one of the better rookie goalies in the league. He proved himself in the playoffs the season before, and you just won't let him play for you. Stop it, as my daughters would say. Okay, but here they are. They've brought back Frederick Anderson and Antti Ranta. They're running it back because they understand Kochetkov is still waiver exempt. You can still bounce him back and forth between the NHL and the minors. I'm sure he'll still get opportunities this year based on the injury history of Anderson and Ranta, and that's the design clearly in Carolina. They want to be 3 deep. It pays to be 3 deep, or as Vegas showed us, 5 deep at goaltender in the modern NHL. But just for fantasy value, he was someone I was really excited about as a sleeper going into next season, and now the fantasy value is dead. He's dead. He will not be ranked in my top 300 in pretty much any scenario unless there's an off-season training injury for Anderson or Ranta at this point.
which is very likely at this point. I guess the one thing they may have done is they may have looked at natural stat trick and looked at Kochekhov's numbers last year and said, "Yeah, he got us a bunch of wins. His advanced stats were closer to what we would expect from Matt Murray, Craig Anderson, and um, Cal Peterson." So
Interesting.
could also be looking. They could be looking at that. Unfortunately, as good as he's been in some of those games, his advanced numbers are not great. And, because I was confused too, and maybe they're just not ready to give a guy who, actually had a minus goal saved above average last year. But we'll see. I don't know. I don't know. I don't agree with them bringing back both Ranta and Anderson. That seemed like the perfect opportunity to let Antti Ranta go, but I don't know. I don't get that one either. All right, next one, Frank Vatrano.
Yeah, this is a weird one. Like, why am I talking about Frank Vatrano? He's not that relevant.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. He's going to be even less relevant. This was a guy who I think was one of the more underrated sources of goals just in really deep leagues. He had 21 goals last year, but with Alex Killorn coming in and Adam Henrique is still there, who's been playing left wing primarily with Trevor Zegras. Well, Killorn at that AAV 6.25 million, he's guaranteed to be playing in the top six. So Frank Vatrano, I believe, will be pushed out of the top six, more likely be playing a bottom six role, and that will make him irrelevant in fantasy. So that's someone who takes a hit for sure.
Yep. Next one, Jason Zucker. One that finally had a bit of a rebound year last year. He had almost 50 points, almost 30 goals with the Penguins. The first time he kind of came close to that in basically about since 2018 when he was with Minnesota. But now he's going to Arizona. So there's that.
Yeah, this is going to hurt our buddy Mike Gold's feelings. And to be clear, Mike, if you're listening, Mike, our buddy writer at Daily Faceoff, I'm not saying that it's a bad move for the Arizona Coyotes. I think Jason Zucker was a good get, but just for Zucker's value, because Clayton Keller has been playing on the wing and Nick Schmaltz has too. Barrett Hayton was playing some center. That first line was really cooking for the second half last year. I feel like it's pretty much locked in place going into this year. So who is Jason Zucker going to be playing with? I think he's going to move down to the second line. Is he going to be playing with like Travis Boyd as his center? Is he going to be playing on a line with Alex Kerfoot? When he's used to playing primarily with guys like Evgeny Malkin, I just think, again, you're seeing probably a pattern here when I'm saying fallers, but it's the change in line mate quality is what causes the drop in value. So, and not just temporary, it's more just looking at the setup and thinking, is there a scenario in which Jason Zucker suddenly is the top line left winger? I don't think so, because again, that's Clayton Keller. So I just think the ceiling rather for him has lowered.
No, I can't argue there. Uh, Connor Hellebuck, the guy that
Yeah.
everyone's kind of expected to be traded at some point. He's not.
Yeah. So this is a think outside the box one, right? So Connor Hellebuck seemed very likely to be traded a couple weeks back. And now we're getting a little deeper into the offseason, and it's like, okay, well, the Penguins signed Tristan Jarry, LA signed Cam Talbot, Ottawa signed Corpusalo. The Devils maybe are still lingering out there, but in terms of the possible landing spots for Hellebuck, they are definitely starting to dwindle. And that presents a scenario in which we could see Hellebuck staying with the Jets and a weakened Jets team that traded Pierre-Luc Dubois and bought out Blake Wheeler. And it's like, oh no, is that what we're going to get next year? Connor Hellebuck just hanging out on a weaker Jets team. So to me, that could actually bring his value down. I was expecting him to experience a nice jump in fantasy value, maybe be a top 5 fantasy goalie next year. I don't know if that'll be the case if he's playing on one of the weaker Jets teams of his career. So it's a little disappointing. And I think the odds of a trade have gone way down just based on the fact there are fewer suitors for him.
Yeah, and it makes him way harder to trade him in season. So it's kind of like if you're not doing it now, what are you gonna do there? So there's that problem.